Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Google Hangout May 2016. This program is presented by the International Electrotechnical Commission in partnership with the International Telecommunications Union and the International Standards Organization. These are three Geneva-based organizations that are collaborating together on the World Smart City Forum, which you're now joining today, and thanks for doing that. My name is Gordon Feller. I'm the moderator of the program. I'm based in San Francisco, and we're being assisted by Sylvia, who is sitting in the United Kingdom and who's going to help us through the process of this one-hour program today. We have all of you scattered around the world, and we know that time is precious, so we're going to dive right into it. Many of you know already that the World Smart City Forum is a 6-month-long experiment in open discussion and dialogue, and informal hangout today is focused on a special theme, which is industrial strategy and smarter energy in cities. And I'll turn to our presenter in a moment, but first a few ground rules. You're all welcome in the chat window to ask your questions and make your comments. And Sylvia will help to moderate that, and I'll be serving as the voice for your question when we get to that portion of the program, which is part 3. We're doing part 1 right now, the introduction. Part 2 will be our presenter. Part 3 will be your comments and questions, and then we'll close in part 4, and that'll be at the end of the hour, and then we're going to post this program live on YouTube with the slide presentation included. But let me say a little bit about World Smart City Forum. We're an experiment in leadership dialogue that's been put together to try and encourage a review of what are the obstacles and opportunities for smart cities and the global standards. So let me introduce Richard Schomberg, and while you're formulating your questions and comments during his presentation, remember to enter that into the chat window, and if you don't have access for some reason to the chat window, you can always join us on twitter.com/worldsmartcity. Richard Schomberg is sitting in France today. He's the IEC Smart City Chair, and at the EDF organization, Électricité de France, he's the Vice President of Smart Energy Standards. Richard is, by all accounts, all those people who know his work, he's not only serving as the chair of the IEC Smart Grid Strategic Group, not only the recipient of the IEC's 2011 Lord Kelvin Award, but really behind the scenes he's designed very large, complex systems for critical operations in Électricité de France, and he's been critical in the success of many other deployments that are beyond EDF because of his role in helping to really think through the standards and the protocols and the systems for successful smart grid deployment. He's served as professor in the system engineering program at the École Supérieure d'Électricité in Paris, and he's the chair of the IntelliGrid Architecture and Strategy Committee at EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, which is based just a few miles from where I'm sitting. He has many other roles that he plays, some of them with utilities like Southern California Edison and the U.S. Department of Energy Gridwise Architecture Council. But most important and most significant, of course, is that because EDF Group is really one of the 2 or 3 world leaders in smart grid deployment, he's been focused on R&D in the EDF Group. He's been focused on sourcing, on innovation transfers, developing the strategy, and coordinating smart energy standardization activities. So we're very pleased, very honored to have him here. He's prepared an outstanding presentation. And Richard, the floor is yours. Thank you for being part of this program today.
Thank you, Gordon, for this those kind words and this great introduction. And I would like to talk today from the viewpoint of multi-energy utilities, but also from the viewpoint of standard development. And definitely energy is essential to whichever advancement you may think of in a city. And you can get cities smarter by connectivity, but also by design. And I will share with you some vision about this and share some examples. So definitely energy is one of the verticals in a city and each vertical is developing, operating, maintaining its own infrastructure with devices, data, and of course, collecting a lot of data, and also proposing their own apps. And a lot of improvement can be achieved within a vertical. So you see here some of the verticals traditionally you find in a smart city for electricity, water, gas, transportation, emergency, but you have also security, e-health, e-education, etc. So a lot of improvement can be made within a vertical by adding some technology or some ICT, but most importantly, we may think that there would be even more benefits if we can start to have some kind of infrastructure shared in between the verticals, and even better, starting to have some blended apps, where the blended app would actually combine data coming from different verticals. And to do that, of course, we would need a lot of standards, and more critically, having converged standards to approach this target. And why would we do that? Why the industry would like to do that? Well, we can actually reference a study that has been made by Cisco on Internet of Everything, showing that actually you can grab 2/3 of the benefits within one given vertical, and you can get 1/3 of the total benefits actually across verticals. So this can be highly significant, especially if you have in mind the 14 trillion US dollars that were actually estimated in this Cisco Internet of Everything study for 2030. So the idea is very simple, and definitely, once again, the standards are the enablers. They would help resolving the complexity, and you have to keep in mind that the industry gets the standard that the industry deserves, which means that the industry has to invest in standard development. Industry players have to come to the table, and they have to actually express their needs. And also, very often the industry is complaining about too many standards that might be competing against each other, but you see, it's not about blaming SDOs, because the SDOs are just doing what their members are proposing. So you see, it's a kind of chicken and egg situation where the SDOs have to do their part, but also all the industrial stakeholders have to get to the table, and they have to be a bit consistent also regarding what they are pushing in the different SDOs. So here at that level, I think I'd like to share with you a first example of a killer app that allows to grab benefits across different verticals. Here the example is smart street lighting. The street lighting energy is actually a big part, very large part of the budget of local authorities, and that it's up to 30 to 40% of the total energy bill of a city, for example. And this is where it's very interesting to see that the innovation in the lighting technology allows a lot of savings regarding energy. And this is great because investing in new lighting technology is actually providing a return on investment very quickly, which at the same time allows to install a lot of different things on the lighting poles. And here you have an example on this slide where you can, of course, use this light pole to install a lot of digital technology, a lot of sensors. It can be cameras for video surveillance. It can be sensors for environment or also for detecting earthquake in some areas of the world, but also it can be used actually to as marketing channels to customers, or to find out some open parking spots close by to the light poles. And there is no limit to this. You see, you can use those light poles to install some communication devices, so that you have a wireless canopy allowing roaming seamlessly across a city. So this is the first killer app where it pays for itself, you see, and you have a return on investment very quickly. And actually, it allows to grab benefits across many different verticals. So what do we do with connectivity? It's very simple. We collect data, we communicate those data, and then we crunch those data. We crunch the data to do what? To actually present in a more actionable manner information. We can perfect operations, and even better, we can predict and anticipate, which actually provides a huge value. And first example presenting information is now the available platforms allowing to present geospatial and visual analytics. And they can provide common operational views across organizations to improve asset planning and maintenance, and allow to collaborate responding to emergencies and understanding more readily the real impact of weather events, of fire. And this is actually implemented in several cities, especially in the US. And another great example of presenting information is the City of Rio Control Center, that is allowing to coordinate the operations of more than 30 municipal and state departments, plus private utility and transportation companies. They can prepare for a sporting event, as well handling emergencies. And beyond presenting more actionable information now, with an IoT means big data approach, it is possible to perfect operation. And the first example I want to share with you is the Microsoft campus in Redmond. And Microsoft campus is quite huge. It's like a city, actually. 125 buildings, almost 60,000 employees. And they have deployed systems to optimize energy, optimize all the generation capabilities, as well as all the appliances and all whatever is consuming energy. So what is interesting here in this example? They were able to deploy very quickly, and in less than 2 years, they were able to recoup their investment. What's interesting here is not the fact that they have deployed some energy efficiency technology. What's interesting is to look at this as an example of a city that actually is owned just by one stakeholder, which means that the decisions are very easy to make. And they were really fortunate to be able to decide and deploy immediately. And this is actually a major hurdle in the Smart Cities project, because there are so many stakeholders that it's not moving that fast, or it's even not moving at all. Now, beyond perfecting, well, just as another example of perfecting, actually, we can also have what's going on in Singapore, where, of course, we can improve the traffic data and the traffic condition on the roads. But in Singapore, some systems have been deployed to predict the congestions with 90% accuracy, up to 1 hour ahead. And it can predict the traffic volumes and speed, thanks to road sensors, cameras, taxi transponders, historical data, roadworks, weather forecasts, you name it. And they are also able to dispatch the taxis where they are the most needed at some point in time. Now, the most exciting example I'd like to share with you is the city of Memphis, where since 2006, Memphis was ranked one of the most dangerous cities in the US. They have implemented a solution to dispatch preventively at the right time police to hotspots. And they have been able to actually improve by 30% the crime KPI, where why this is working. Actually, people are creatures of habits. And you see with e-commerce, for example, with the right tools and data, it is easy to predict what people will buy next. And actually here is the exact same algorithm that have been used, of course, with different set of data. So this is how connectivity can bring some smartness to the cities. But also we can look at getting cities smarter by design. And of course, very often citizens are asking for new technologies and implementing smart innovations. And here I want to share with you the example of what happened in London, where some smart trash cans have been deployed just before the 2012 Summer Olympics. So you see the picture here, the smart trash can with on the side a screen to display some information, actually some advertisement. And here the business model is that this is owned and operated by a private company, and the city can use those displays 5% of the airtime to display some information from the city hall to the citizens. And this was great. This was well received until actually some of those trash cans have been enabled to track the MAC address of the cell phones passing by and the Wi-Fi enabled. And actually they were able to track the position of the citizen, and if the citizen was stopping by the window of a close by store. And for example, there is a coffee shop close by to this trash can, so they were able to actually store the MAC address of people that were stopping just for a few minutes in front of this coffee shop store. And the next time this citizen was passing by the trash can, they were displaying on the trash can advertisement for this coffee shop. And this has been triggering a lot of anger to the point that they've been obliged to actually deactivate this tracking capability. So this is really showing that with technology we can do many, many things. But can it be accepted easily by citizens? And definitely, if it's free, you're probably the product. And we can really wonder if the fair value of a service can be really free. So definitely, we have to keep in mind that privacy and cybersecurity need to be designed upfront. This is no more an option. So, having said that, now let's look at how the sustainability of the cities can be improved with a smarter design approach. And when we look at from a different angle and considering new technologies for the benefits of long-term actions and planning, we need to take a systemic approach. And let's look at the concrete example of energy, where first you may think of what is the relationship and how are coupled energy and urban development. So you see on the screen energy on the right hand side, and you see different criteria and factors that we might think have a relationship or an impact on energy. And when you try to model this, you end up with a very, very complex situation. And it's extremely difficult because it's multi-scale. There are a lot of interactions both ways, and it's non-deterministic. And this is where we found out that simulation, modeling and simulation, is a good approach to actually figure out what to do and help designing actually the city in a smarter way. And I want to share with you one real example. Here what you see on the screen is the skyline of an area of the city of Singapore. So the question was, let's refurbish this area of Singapore, and on which building should we install PV panels? And this is where the skyline of Singapore has been modeled very accurately. And we've been developing models to find out which building was the most exposed to the sun radiations, and also on which building we would have PV panels generating more megawatt hour annually. And the result was really counterintuitive, because what we found out is that you get much more megawatt hours from PV panels that are installed on buildings that are not the most exposed to sun radiations. And it would have been impossible to find that out without actually running simulation. And why this is the case? It's because actually the buildings most exposed to sun radiation are the tallest buildings. The tallest buildings are in Singapore quite narrow. And then when you do the numbers, you see it's better to have wide areas covered by PV panels rather than having narrow areas, even if you get more sunlight, actually covered with the PV panels. So this is just an example, but it's a real example, and this has been actually leading to come up with some wider modeling and simulation with not just PV panels, but also all air conditioning systems and all the lighting possibilities and all the generation capabilities you can have in an area, fuel cells, photovoltaic, even getting energy back from regenerative lifts. But of course, also don't forget any energy efficiency or green home package that could be offered to citizens, and the greenery and landscape, and also the water cycles. And definitely we have to pay attention to waste and recycling, transportation. And we've been coming up with modeling and simulation of everything about energy, with everything about cost of investment, operation, and also what you get, which money you can get by selling power out from this area or this city. Also, everything about the CO2 emissions and the green footprint, but most importantly also everything about the KPIs that are important for this given city. And we have developed a platform for modeling and simulation. This is really a multidimensional decision support tool to optimize a green print, and this is operated by the Singapore's Housing and Development Board. And what this allows is really going building per building and choosing different equipments that could be installed or not, and you can find immediately the impact on energy, greenhouse gas emission footprint, the cost, and the KPIs. And this is used actually to make the decision of investment. And the very next step is actually to go beyond making investment decisions, but also coupling this when we operate the city, you see, to keep monitoring actual results over time and be able to detect also the slight deviations that can occur because the equipment could start aging too much and be able to generate signals for maintenance and forthcoming upgrades. So the conclusions is quite obvious. The cities can be designed and managed differently, right? And the standards and interoperability are the enablers because they pre-resolve the complexity and definitely this is a paramount to just accelerate deployment, but just trigger the deployments, I would say. Now, definitely we can add some intelligence. I gave you a couple of compelling real examples of things that works today and much more to come. And also we see that the smartness of the city is not just about adding some ICT, artificial intelligence, but also the long-term planning from multiple viewpoints from sustainability is critical. But most important to keep in mind is that the driving force of all of this must be understanding human behaviors, human needs, human aspirations. We cannot make happy the citizens despite themselves. I thank you very much for your patience up to now, and I hope you have many questions.
Thank you so much. This is outstanding, and I want to start the questions off with I guess a big picture question. Obstacles, barriers is the theme. Can you give us your top maybe 3 barriers that you think are in the way as we help cities look at these options and deploy these technologies and adopt these standards? Can you identify not just the obstacle or the barrier, but maybe give us a hint about what you think the best method will be to bust the barrier?
Okay, that's a difficult question, but maybe, you see, we are always surprised of what happens and why things are not moving, even though I try through the presentation to show that many things exist separately, but it's very difficult to get decisions made for deployment. So we need to think ourselves in the shoes of the decision makers just for a few minutes. So a major hurdle, I think, is the legacy. We need not just thinking about new exciting things or deploying technologies. I think the most important thing is not just to define a target situation. Most important is to define some transition plans with milestones. And this is not done this is not easy, and this is, I don't see that very frequently, you see. Very often you see cities proposing roadmaps, but the roadmaps, very often they essentially describe an endpoint. And they may say, oh, it's going to take some time. But I don't see that often described taking into account what exists and working from what exists and how easy or not it is to move from what exists to respect the pre-existing investments. And I don't see that often proposing those transition plans from the viewpoint of what already exists. So to me, that's the most important hurdle. And actually, the hint is, hey, let's pay more attention. You see, it's not about the fact that people are not proposing roadmap. It's about the fact that the roadmap or the outline of the roadmap is not putting enough emphasis on describing what exists and what can be modified or not, and actually proposing risk assessment and impact assessment. You see, to be able to propose some risk-informed decisions to the decision makers. So decision makers, they end up receiving a nice report that can be quite thick, and there are many new exciting technologies that are described. Well, that's fine. And at the end, they are asked to just activate this and sign the check. They have no idea really what this will trigger, or very often it's not easy. So to me, first thing. Okay, another thing, and I think I alluded to it during the presentation, which is that if we want to deploy widely some new technologies, well, we need to improve considerably the standards portfolio. And there are different things to do. I think the IEC is organizing a very interesting and compelling convergence effort regarding making inventories of existing standards, so it's respecting what exists, basically, and working on gaps, overlaps to quickly brace the gaps, cover uncovered areas, and also make more usable the standards for project managers. So this will still take time, and this is where I think there is an over-expectation from the industry, you see, because the industry started, I remember just on the smart grid, because now we're talking about smart energy and smart cities, right? But just for smart grid. Smart grid effort started in 2001, and by 2007, 2008, the industry realized that no stakeholder alone could actually come up with solutions resolving everything. And all of a sudden, the political appointees, regulators, vendors, utilities, they all of a sudden came up with this bright idea that if standards existed and were available, then it would be very simple. So they just deferred the entire challenge to the SDOs. So all of a sudden, the entire challenge ended up on the desk of the SDOs, but the SDOs, I would say, were not specially prepared to handle this challenge. And of course, it's very simple to acknowledge that if we had standards, it would work. This is great, a great first step, but now it's necessary to make sure that the SDOs will be able to achieve this. And to do this, this is where we need to have at the table much more stakeholders actually joining forces to first make sure that all stakeholders categories are represented, and also that we start to craft collectively, even in between the SDOs, a one-stop shop window with all the standards that are needed and can be used in any given smart city, smart energy project. And this is what IEC has started to do, and I would say this is quite unique. No other SDO has had an approach like this to put in place a platform, and we can have an idea of this. If you go to the IEC website, you can see an IEC mapping tool that actually just gives an idea of this new capability to visualize which standards are available, how they can be used, and it's really like a GPS system for developers to navigate and find out which standard they can actually apply in which technical area, as well as a GPS system for SDOs themselves to find out where they are and which standard are missing or in which they should put some efforts. So I gave you here two major hurdles and some hints about what can be done to overcome them. I would stop with two because I will leave some time for maybe other questions.
Yep. Thank you. So we're seeing some tweets at the hashtag World Smart City 2016, and we're seeing some questions. So top question first for you. What are your top tips, your top suggestions about getting the different silos and the stakeholders in those different silos successfully involved in the smart city planning process? Are there some techniques that you would suggest those who are trying to push multiple stakeholders from different silos to work together?
Okay, so this is always the key question to see where we think that, or yeah, it's quite natural to think that, hey, maybe there is one technique or one thing that could be done, and all of a sudden people would behave differently. I've been looking for this holy grail for a long time. Let me first try to propose one thing. You see, very often I'm talking with people getting very excited with a smart city project. You see, and they can talk and present their plans and share their excitement. And at some point I say, you know what, it's so exciting that please invite me over. I would like to spend 2 or 3 weeks in this smart city. And I would like to feel and touch by myself what kind of improvement and how this would impact positively my quality of life. And of course, each time, you see, I take people they are really taken by surprise because they didn't think about this, and there is no provision to do that. But in a nutshell, I think we should, and this was the punchline of my conclusion, we need to do much more efforts regarding the citizens that we want to make happy or happier, and I said despite themselves, and working from there, then I think it would be easier to get people at the table.
So if putting the citizen at the center of this certainly is one of the themes that we're going to address in the July 13 program in Singapore. We're inviting everybody to consider joining us there, and on the worldsmartcity.org website there's details about how to get registered, and we'll obviously be webcasting the event, but clearly being on the ground for this discussion on July 13 would be ideal. One of the things we're going to talk about are case studies from the stage during the program, because we'll have a panel on the pain points facing smart cities around water, around energy, around transport, and around cybersecurity. The question just came in, are there suggestions that you would make or recommendations you would make about publicly available case studies that focus on the best practices that would help reveal some of the success, the elements of success for an effective process that could be used to work with city planners and other stakeholders? And the questioner is really asking this because they're concerned about convincing some cities who have not gotten with the program, I guess you could say, that they do need to be involved in planning out how the smart city would work in that particular location. So I guess to summarize, any best practice case study that you can recommend that shows the process a city goes through, the planners in that city or the other stakeholders?
This is always very tricky, because sometimes of course we would like to see some examples or things that we might be tempted to follow. You see, where you might grab a case study and just try to see how this would translate in your own context. I think what you can really get from the case study, or what we should really try to get from the case study, is the approach, the methodology, how they've been developing the case study, rather than the description of the deployment of a given technology, and look at the business case that can be presented, because very often this is what is documented. And what I tried to explain is that very often, if you would talk to people who have succeeded to deploy or to do some smartness in a city, they would explain you things differently than what is presented on the typically a published case study, where very often it's a kind of business case where you see, okay, here are some technologies, here are maybe some hints about applying that we followed to apply this technology in our specific case, okay, and actually this is you cannot really translate it, or it doesn't do justice, or there. Let me put it this way: you can get much more by trying to understand where they came from and which challenges or what was specific in their case and that they succeeded to address. And typically this ties in the previous question about how to get people to the table, you see. So if you allow me, this would be my first answer. Second answer, yes, there are many case studies. You can just Google, as we are on a Google Hangout, right? So you can Google case study for smart cities, and definitely I need to do justice to the Smart Cities Council, for example, that is up and running already for many years, and they are making available actually a lot of those case studies. But just looking at those, once again, it's not enough, and also there are other organizations, you see, like the Cities of the Minds, and there are key organizations in the world that are trying to go beyond just case studies on deploying technology.
On this question of case studies, it was asked about Singapore and the discussion you had on the Singaporean experience, which is clearly you know, an outstanding example where you've had both executive leadership in the government side, but you've also had private sector and NGO action that made it possible for Singapore to make so much progress. Do you see impacts from the project that the Singaporean government has launched, at least in the domain that you were describing during your presentation, measurable impacts that have been shared with the world that maybe indicate what the before and after was? And in terms of impact, I think the questioner is asking particularly about feedback from citizens and other stakeholders. You know, has there been, like you saw in the London case study, any pushback on invasion of privacy, or what other indicators have you seen from the Singaporean experience that might be relevant for the rest of the world?
No, I see. That's a very good question here, because this is really looking at all of this from the viewpoint of the people who should get some benefits. And okay, no, on the Singapore example, it's recent, you see, where we have a feedback from the City of Singapore development teams, where they are able to make the informed decisions. It's not, it has, the refurbishment has not been achieved for long enough to get feedback from the citizens themselves. So nothing regarding privacy or cybersecurity, definitely, and definitely what is envisioned by a government or the City of Singapore has nothing to do with trying to make money, you see, with advertisement or direct advertisement, using the data of citizens to somehow make more money. But there is a direct impact given a defined budget, making risk-informed decisions, and being able to actually make decisions that you would not have been able to make without. And when you look at down about suggestions that are made by the then you discover counterintuitive ideas, and this is where this is absolutely compelling. You see, I could show you, I didn't have time to run the simulation. I could have shown you, I do have some movie showing the simulations going on, where you discover results, and when you look at the result and try to think about, hey, is this something intuitive, or is this something. How do we explain that? And this is where you learn a lot. So huge feedback. And keep in mind, what was interesting in what I presented is not to advertise for a tool. We're not selling the tool. It's interesting to advertise an approach, which is when you face very complex issue with many different dimensions, let's have the computer making the heavy lifting for you. And this is the case for the for this computer-aided design tool, but this is also the philosophy that we followed within the IEC with the mapping tool. You see this kind of system helping navigating throughout thousands of standards, and not just the IEC standards, but we have made it available for ISO and ITU and IEEE. You're muted. You're muted, Gordon.
Sorry about that. Thanks for that. Some people have asked you to stop sharing on your screen so that they can see you when you're speaking. By the way, in case you have a moment to shift back. Good. We want to see your face.
Okay.
So the question that was asked about IEC and ISO and ITU and the standard development organizations who are really at the frontier of this effort. Are there some methods by which the World Council on City Data or other NGOs that are now active can encourage faster adoption by the cities themselves? Is there, do you think, a method that we should be utilizing to help city leaders reduce their perceived risk and encourage them to accelerate the transition toward adopting the technologies, for instance, that are readily available, like outdoor street lighting technologies? You talked about, earlier in the Q&A about busting some of the barriers. But maybe is there, a particular method for international agencies to work with cities that you think is needing to be reinforced or needing to be enlarged?
So you were actually it was not audible at the beginning of the question, so there was a technical problem.
So the questioner was really asking about methods by which the international agencies like IEC, ITU, ISO could work directly with cities so they're not only dependent on the member states, the national governments, but the cities themselves can engage with the international organizations in ways that maybe they're not doing so already.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting approach, you say, to start. And I think IEC is actually seizing this dimension and is organizing such opportunities to have some kind of permanent forums engaging the non-traditional members of the standard development community. And we have organized, and we are organizing currently, different forums of that type, allowing to meet from time to time with some stakeholder categories to make sure that we understand what they want or what they don't want, and that to make sure that they can see what we're doing at the IEC and with ISO and ITU, so that they can react. So it's kind of, I'm calling this as a system engineer, I'm calling this just closing loops. We need to close loops, much more loops. So it's as simple as this: identify significant loops and just close the loops. So to me, yes, there is room for a huge, major step forwards. Just organizing very simple forums, and I'm sure that this event in Singapore in July can be a very first step to exactly do what you just described.
Well, we love simple formulas because it helps remind us that while a lot of this is very complex, and technology is very complex. There are some simple actions that cities can take, that utilities can take, that national governments can take, that international agencies can take, as well as NGOs. And in that spirit, I guess, a question about smart outdoor street lighting. So there are a lot of vendors who have technology innovations in this area. I just had a chance to see close up what Twilight is doing, a Amsterdam-based company that's really built an outstanding platform for smart city deployment that uses the outdoor street light as an innovation tool, as a mechanism for a lot of other things to be done. Are you seeing one city that maybe in the EDF geography where EDF itself has done something amazing with the outdoor streetlights that you would want us to maybe point ourselves toward as we do research after today's program and we follow up? Is there one city like Paris or Lyon or another that really has done something interesting with the smart outdoor streetlights that we should look at more closely?
So, well, I don't want just to put the spotlight on, especially on one stakeholder or one company, because I don't want to be accused to actually try to get too much advantage from the situation. But of course, we can look at what's going on in Paris currently, or in the city of Nice, or an initiative in the city of Lyon. But what we have to keep in mind is it's not actually just about technology. It's about actually looking at strategic assets that are out there. It's not just actually about street lighting. You see, you have the trash cans, you have the shared bicycles or shared cars, infrastructures, and actually I would characterize those as strategic assets. Why? Because they are throughout the city. They can actually be close to the citizens, and they all are allowing to deploy a lot of new technology. And I'm looking. You see the street lighting example. It's compelling. It's easy to use this as a case study because the improvement in lighting technology allows such improvement in the energy bill that it pays for itself. But I'm looking for much more innovative applications, and I would not recommend to go in one or other city. One thing I want to recommend is to go to the website of the city of Paris. And it's not about street lighting or deploying a technology, but there is an original initiative which is proposing a roadmap to have the city of Paris smarter, and they are trying to engage the citizens in a way that I think has not been done that way or to that extent everywhere else. So there is an active blog currently, so you can access a roadmap in English, and there is an active blog for citizens to just get engaged, to have them saying what they like, what they don't like, if there are things they would like to see and that is not in the roadmap. And what is original is, once again, having the citizens really at the core of the thinking and the efforts you want to deploy.
Outstanding. That is a good suggestion, and we'll follow through. We've followed, obviously, what's happened with the Paris city government initiatives. A question from Peter at IEC. The supply of energy is another major problem facing urban populations, particularly if they're in a state of continuous growth. So with regard to the demand response technologies that are now available and the methods of demand response, what new ways do you see the public becoming more actively involved in conserving energy, given where we are in demand response? And do you know how utilities are dealing with this? Are they taking advantage and encouraging active citizen ratepayer participation in addressing the energy supply problem and in energy efficiency.
Yes, I think what has been interesting regarding demand response is each time we have tried, we need to deploy actually some boxes and some technology. You see, some ICT boxes with some communication networks to implement the demand response program. Then you end up with a lot of technology deployed out there. And what is expected is that when a utility would press a key, that all of a sudden they could count on the fact that a lot of load would be shed, because they need this to balance the network. Okay, this is not that simple for several reasons. First, because very often the dependency or the resiliency of this complex chain has not been taken into account from the very beginning of the design, which means that in many cases you can deploy a lot of those electronic boxes, costly, and you're not sure it's going to work. Now, if you're in cities, what's interesting is the density of the demand response nodes, you see. And given the density of the demand response nodes, this is where it might be much easier to have a much better return on investment, but also efficiency about shedding loads, having really the demand response effect. But now there is something else, because beyond demand response, the demand response classically is shedding some load. Now you have this concept of transactive energy, where what's interesting is not just shedding load, but you could trigger also consumption at some point in time if you have too much energy generated because you have too much sun on the PV panels or too much wind on the windmills, have too much electricity, then you would like to trigger consumption when it actually helps evacuating this energy. But also you could trigger generation, or you could trigger actually getting energy back from some energy storage. So transactive energy is a kind of extension of the demand response concept, with not only shedding load, but also getting some more energy injected in the network. And this is an approach that is pursued by many stakeholders throughout the world, and standardization is going on considering those concepts.
Fantastic. So this comes to us as a concluding suggestion for people to look more closely at emerging technology, not only that empowers the utility operator, but potentially also empowers the citizen and the enterprise that's using the energy. And this is something which, you know, cities obviously want to embrace, even if they don't own and operate their own utilities, as many cities do not. They still have the option of working in partnership with utilities to encourage them to deploy advanced technology. So we're coming to the top of the hour. Richard, on behalf of everybody, we want to thank you for guiding us through the maze, through the complexity of this, making sense of this is an important step on the road toward July 13 in Singapore and beyond. We'll be posting this presentation of yours, the slides, as well as the YouTube video on the website of the World Smart City program, and that's worldsmartcity.org. I would encourage anybody who didn't see the tweets that were posted to go and take a look, because it was a very good summary of some of the highlights of your presentation. I think, Richard, you'll find the Twitter feed from this 1 hour to be a helpful resource for all of us. We appreciate everybody who participated live. We'd love to hear from anybody who sees this after the live program in the days and weeks and months ahead. Give us your feedback. We'll be posting on the blog site and in the comments area and the discussion area in the different forums that we have at worldsmartcity.org. We'll be publishing a lot of comments and suggestions afterwards on these themes, Richard. So once again, Sylvia in the UK, thank you so much for helping to produce this, and everybody who joined us. We look forward to the next. Thank you all, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gordon. Bye-bye.